I used to think I was a good judge of character. That's what 2 years of therapy and a restraining order will teach you. To trust your gut, to see red flags, to protect yourself. But the night Max bolted through that open door 3 apartments down, my gut told me something I didn't want to hear. The man crouched on my kitchen floor, covered in tattoos and smelling like cigarette smoke, was the safest I'd felt in months. His hands were scarred. His voice was low and careful. And when he said he'd only give Max back if I had dinner with him, I should have grabbed my dog and run. But I looked into those quiet, watchful eyes that had seen things I couldn't imagine, and I said yes. I didn't know he'd just gotten out of prison. I didn't know that saying yes would crack me open in ways I never expected. All I knew was that for the first time in years, someone was asking, not taking. You will feel so many emotions in this story of second chances and forbidden love. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. It started with Max. My rescue dog had anxiety, just like me. We were a perfect match of broken things trying to heal. I'd only been in the building 2 weeks when he bolted out the door during one of his panic episodes, disappearing down the dim hallway before I could grab his leash. I chased him in socks and an oversized sweater, heart pounding, my breath coming in short gasps that echoed off the peeling wallpaper. The building was old, the kind where sounds traveled and secrets didn't stay hidden long. I found him inside apartment 4C, tail wagging like he'd found home. The man inside was on his knees, scratching Max behind the ears with rough, careful hands. He was bald, broad-shouldered, covered in faded tattoos that disappeared under his white t-shirt. His apartment was almost empty, just a couch, a table, a single chair, no pictures on the walls, no clutter, no mess, like someone who'd just moved in or someone who'd learned to live without things. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were gray and steady, and he didn't smile. He just studied me, the way you study something fragile that might break if you move too fast. Sorry, I said, my voice shaking. He ran. I'm so sorry. The man stood slowly, unfolding himself to his full height. He had to be 6'2", maybe more. His hands were scarred across the knuckles. There was a tattoo on his neck I couldn't quite make out. He's fine, the man said. His voice was low and even, like gravel smoothed by water. He's got good taste. Stays with people who don't bullshit him. I laughed nervously and reached for Max's leash, which was dangling from the man's other hand. But he held it just out of reach, not aggressively, just deliberately. I'll give him back, he said. But only if you have dinner with me. Tonight. I blinked. What? Dinner? You and me. Tonight? I don't even know you. Then we'll fix that. I should have grabbed my dog and left. Should have made some excuse, laughed it off, backed out of that empty apartment with its bare walls and single chair. But I didn't. Something about the way he stood there, patient and still, like he had all the time in the world and nothing to lose, it disarmed me. He wasn't pushy, wasn't aggressive. He was just, asking, not taking. And that was new. Are you serious? I asked. I don't joke much. I looked at Max, who was sitting perfectly still between us, panting happily like he'd orchestrated the whole thing. Then I looked back at the man. Up close, I could see more. The way his t-shirt was faded but clean, the way his jeans were worn at the knees, the way he smelled like soap and tobacco and something else I couldn't place. Something honest. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay, dinner. He nodded once, then handed me the leash. His fingers brushed mine for half a second. They were warm. 7 o'clock. I'll knock. I walked back to my apartment in a daze, Max trotting beside me like nothing strange had just happened. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my door. The lock that stuck, the one I'd been meaning to get fixed but kept forgetting about because I was always too tired after my shifts at the diner. That night, I tried on 3 different outfits. Told myself I was being ridiculous. Told myself this was probably a terrible idea. But at 7 o'clock, when the knock came, I opened the door anyway. He was standing there in the same clothes, hands in his pockets. Ready? He asked. Yeah, I'm ready. We walked down the hallway side by side, and as I locked my door behind me, he paused. Hey, he said. You shouldn't be walking this hallway alone at night. Not with that broken lock on your door. I froze, my key still in my hand. I'd never told him about the lock, and he'd never been to my apartment. After that night, I started seeing him everywhere. At the bus stop in the morning, leaning against the graffitied shelter with his hands in his jacket pockets, watching the street like he was memorizing license plates. Outside the grocery store on Tuesday when I got off early, carrying 2 bags that looked too light for someone his size. Sitting on the front steps of our building when I came home late from my double shift at the diner, smoking a cigarette in the dark like he was waiting for something that might never come. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Denver wasn't that big. Our neighborhood was smaller. People overlapped. But then I realized he was always there when I needed him. Not before. Not randomly. Just when it mattered. He fixed my lock without asking. I came home one afternoon and it turned smooth as butter. No more sticking, no more jamming. When I knocked on his door to thank him, he just shrugged. It was loose, he said. Took 5 minutes. His name was Ethan. Ethan Cole. I learned it from the mailbox, not from him. He didn't offer much about himself. No stories about where he'd been or what he did before this building. But he noticed everything. The way I flinched when men got too close on the bus. The way I checked over my shoulder in the parking lot. The bruises on my wrist I tried to hide under long sleeves. The ones Brandon had left before I finally got the restraining order. Ethan saw them. He didn't ask. He just started walking Max for me when I worked doubles, leaving the leash hung on my doorknob with a note that said, "He's fed. He's good." I tried to pay him. He wouldn't take it. "I like dogs," he said. "And I've got time." One night, I was carrying groceries up the stairs. Too many bags, too tired to make 2 trips, when one ripped and everything spilled. Cans rolling down the steps, apples bouncing, pasta scattering across the landing. I stood there, staring at the mess, and felt something crack inside me. It was stupid. It was just groceries. But I'd been holding it together for so long that even small things felt impossible. Then Ethan was there, crouching down, picking up cans without a word. He didn't ask if I needed help. He just helped. We carried everything up together in silence, and when we got to my door, he handed me the last bag. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah, just tired." "You work too much." "I don't have a choice." He nodded like he understood something I hadn't said. Then he left, and I stood in my apartment wondering who this man was and why he made me feel less alone. That feeling didn't last. 3 nights later, Brandon showed up. It was past 11, and I was already in my pajamas, trying to study for my nursing exam. The pounding on my door made Max bark and made my stomach drop. "Jenna, I know you're in there." Brandon's voice was slurred, angry, the way it used to get when he'd been drinking. I stood frozen in my living room, phone in hand, trying to decide if I should call the police or if that would just make it worse. "You owe me, Jenna. You owe me $300 and I want it now." I didn't owe him anything. That was the lie he told himself to justify showing up, to justify scaring me, to justify whatever came next. "I'm calling the cops," I shouted through the door. "Go ahead. Tell them how you stole from me." I was shaking, my finger hovering over 911 when I heard another voice in the hallway. Calm, low, steady. "She doesn't owe you anything. Leave." I looked through the peephole and saw Ethan standing between Brandon and my door. He wasn't yelling, wasn't aggressive. He just stood there, arms crossed, like a wall that had appeared out of nowhere. Brandon turned on him. "Who the hell are you?" "Her neighbor. This isn't your business." "It is now." There was something in Ethan's voice, something quiet and final, that made Brandon take a step back. I watched through the peephole as Brandon looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and whatever he saw made his face change, made the anger drain out and fear rush in. "Whatever, man," Brandon muttered. "She's not worth it anyway." He left, just turned around and walked down the hallway like he'd never been there at all. I opened my door. Ethan was still standing there, watching the stairs to make sure Brandon was really gone. "Thank you," I whispered. "You shouldn't thank me." "Why not?" "Because I didn't do anything." "You were here. That's something." He looked at me then, and something passed between us. Something unspoken and heavy. Then Mrs. Chen from 4A came out of her apartment, her face tight with concern. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in. "Do you know who he is?" she whispered, gesturing at Ethan. "Do you know what he did?" I searched his name that night, sat on my bed with my laptop. Max curled beside me and typed, Ethan Cole, Denver assault. The results loaded slowly, like the internet was giving me one last chance to change my mind. The first article had a mugshot. Ethan, 10 years younger, staring into the camera with empty eyes. The headline read, Man sentenced to 10 years for aggravated assault. I clicked it. Read every word. Then I read it again, because my brain couldn't reconcile the man in the article with the man who'd fixed my lock and walked my dog. Ethan Cole, age 22 at the time of arrest. Assault with intent to cause serious bodily harm. Victim hospitalized for 3 weeks. Plea deal accepted. 10 years. Released 3 months ago on good behavior. 10 years. I closed my laptop, opened it again, searched for more. Found court records, parole documentation, a brief mention in a victim's rights newsletter. The details were sparse, clinical, and they told me nothing about why. Just what? Just the facts that would follow him forever, stamped across his life like a brand. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m, I stood outside apartment 4C with my arms crossed and my heart in my throat. When Ethan opened the door, he was already dressed, coffee in hand, like he'd been expecting me. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He didn't flinch, didn't look away. He just stepped aside and let me in. Because you wouldn't have let me help you, he said. And you needed help. His apartment looked the same as before. Maybe emptier in the morning light. The single chair. The library book stacked on the floor. A parole officer's card held to the fridge with a magnet. No TV. No decoration. Nothing that couldn't fit in a box if he had to leave quickly. I stood in the middle of his living room, holding my phone like a weapon. Tell me what happened. You already know what happened. You read the article. I read what you did. I want to know why. Ethan set down his coffee and sat on the couch, elbows on his knees. He looked tired. Not from lack of sleep, but from carrying something heavy for too long. I had a little sister, he said. Emma. She was 16. I was working 3 jobs trying to keep us out of the system after our mom died. Emma started dating this guy, Marcus. He was older, manipulative, and when I found out he was hurting her, I told her to leave him. He paused, rubbed his face. She tried. He didn't let her. Showed up at our apartment, started threatening her, threatening me. Said if she left him, he'd make sure we both regretted it. I told him to leave. He didn't, so I made him. You put him in the hospital. I broke his jaw, 3 ribs, and his collarbone. Yeah, I put him in the hospital. The words hung between us, factual and brutal. I took a plea deal because I didn't want Emma to have to testify, he continued. Didn't want her reliving it in court. My lawyer said I'd get 5 years, maybe less with good behavior. I got 10, served every day. I sat down on the chair across from him. The only chair. Where's Emma now? Safe, married, living in Boulder. She writes sometimes. Does she know you're out? Yeah. She wanted me to stay with her. I told her no. Why? Because I'm not her responsibility anymore. I made my choice. I live with it. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and his eyes were clear. I don't blame you if you want me gone, he said quietly. Most people do. I'm used to it. I should have been angry, should have felt betrayed. But all I felt was the weight of his honesty pressing against my chest. This was a man who'd told me the truth when he could have lied. Who'd protected someone he loved and paid for it with a decade of his life. I'm not most people, I said. No, you're not. But I need to know. Are you still that person? The one who breaks bones when someone threatens you? No, he said without hesitation. I'm not. Prison taught me a lot of things. Patience. Discipline. How to walk away. I don't fight anymore, Jenna. I can't afford to. I believed him. Maybe I was stupid too, but I did. I stood up to leave, and that's when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tell your boyfriend to back off. This isn't over. I showed Ethan the screen. His jaw tightened. That's Brandon, I said. He won't stop on his own. I know. Do you want me to talk to him? No. I don't want you risking your parole because of my ex. Ethan stood, came closer. If I help you, I risk everything. My parole, my freedom, my future. I looked up at him. This man covered in tattoos and scars and a decade of consequences. And I made a choice. Then I guess I'm asking you to risk it. He didn't say yes right away. Ethan just stood there looking at me like I'd asked him to jump off a bridge and trust I'd catch him. Maybe I had. Maybe that's exactly what I was asking. I need to think about this, he said finally. Okay? I'm not that person anymore, Jenna. I don't fight. I don't break the law. But I will keep you safe. I just need to figure out how to do that without going back inside. I nodded. Left his apartment. Spent the rest of the day at work dropping plates and forgetting orders because all I could think about was the way he'd looked at me. Like I was worth the risk, but the risk might destroy him. Brandon didn't text again that day, or the next, but I felt him everywhere. In the parking lot, in the shadows outside the diner, in every car that slowed down when I walked home. Ethan started appearing more, not hovering, just present. He'd be reading on the front steps when I got home, working in the basement workshop when I did laundry, walking Max in the courtyard when I left for my morning shift. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. His presence was the conversation. 3 days after I'd asked him to help me, he knocked on my door with a toolbox. Your bathroom sink is leaking, he said. How do you know that? Mrs. Chen mentioned it. I let him in, watched him work in silence, his hands moving with practiced precision. He'd roll up his sleeves and I could see more tattoos, dates, names I didn't recognize, a quote in Latin I couldn't read. Prison ink, probably. The kind you get when time is all you have. Where'd you learn to fix things? I asked. Prison. They had a vocational program. Carpentry, plumbing, electrical. I did all 3. You're good at it. I had 10 years to practice. He said it without bitterness, just fact. When he finished, he washed his hands in my kitchen sink and dried them on a towel I offered. Coffee? I asked. Yeah. Okay. We sat at my small kitchen table, the one I'd bought at a thrift store, and drank coffee that was too weak because I'd forgotten to buy the good stuff. Max lay at Ethan's feet like he'd always belonged there. Tell me about prison, I said. Why? Because I want to understand. He was quiet for a long time, staring into his mug. It's not what you think, he said finally. It's not violent all the time. Mostly it's just empty. You wake up, you follow the routine, you go to sleep. Days blur together. You lose track of birthdays, holidays, seasons. Everything outside keeps moving and you're just frozen. What was the hardest part? The guilt. Not for what I did to Marcus. He deserved it. But for what I did to Emma. She was 16 and suddenly she had no one. She went to live with our aunt who didn't really want her. I missed her entire life, her graduation, her first job, her wedding. I got letters and photos, but I wasn't there. His voice cracked on the last word. Just barely. I spent 10 years learning how to live with the worst thing I ever did, he continued. How to get up every morning knowing I'd made a choice that cost me everything. How to rebuild when you're starting from nothing and everyone assumes you're going to fail. I reached across the table and touched his hand. Not holding it, just touching. His skin was warm and rough and real. You're not failing, I said. Not yet. Not ever. He looked at our hands like he was memorizing the moment, like he knew it might not last. I go to AA meetings, he said suddenly, even though I've never had a drinking problem. I just go to be around people who understand what it's like to rebuild, to choose every day to be someone better than you were. That's brave. No. It's survival. We sat like that for a while, drinking bad coffee and not talking. It was the most comfortable silence I'd ever been in. That night, I made dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and jarred sauce. But I made enough for 2. Knocked on his door. He answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair damp like he'd just showered. I made too much, I said, holding up the Tupperware. It was a lie, and we both knew it. Thank you. We ate together at his table. He told me about the furniture he was making in the basement, a bookshelf for Mrs. Chen, a coffee table for the building manager, small jobs that paid cash and kept him busy. I told him about nursing school, about how I'd finally decided to go back after years of putting it off, about how terrifying it was to want something that felt so far away. You'll make it, he said. How do you know? Because you don't give up. I've watched you. You're tougher than you think. That's when someone knocked on his door. Hard. Official. 3 sharp raps that made both of us freeze. Ethan stood slowly, set down his fork. When he opened the door, a man in a suit was standing there, badge on his belt, judgment in his eyes, and a manila folder under his arm. "Ethan Cole," the man said. "Yeah. I'm Officer Patterson, your parole officer. We need to talk about your associate, Marcus Webb. He's been seen in the area, and we have reason to believe he's looking for you." Ethan's face went pale. "Marcus is out," the parole officer nodded. "3 days ago, and he's already violated parole. If he contacts you and you don't report it immediately, you go back inside. Do you understand?" "I understand." Officer Patterson's eyes slid to me, standing there with a plate of pasta in my hands. "Who's this?" "My neighbor." "Just your neighbor?" "Yes." The parole officer looked like he didn't believe it, but he didn't push. He handed Ethan the folder. "Read this. Marcus's last known address, his parole conditions, and the number to call if he shows up. Don't be stupid, Cole. You've got 6 months left on parole. Don't throw it away." He left. Ethan closed the door and stood with his back against it, eyes closed. "Who's Marcus?" I asked, though I already knew. "The man I put in the hospital. The man who hurt your sister." "Yeah. And now he's out, and he's looking for you." Ethan opened his eyes. They were dark with something I couldn't name. "He's not just looking for me, Jenna. He's going to try to destroy me, and anyone close to me." Marcus Webb was the kind of man who built his life on other people's fear. Ethan told me everything over the next 2 days. How Marcus had been charming at first, the way predators always are. How he'd isolated Emma, controlled her, made her believe she was nothing without him. How he'd threatened to kill her if she left. How Ethan had walked into their apartment and found Marcus with his hands around Emma's throat. "I didn't think," Ethan said. "I just moved. And I didn't stop until someone pulled me off him." We were sitting in his apartment. The parole officer's folder spread across the table between us. Marcus's mugshot stared up at us. Older now, harder, with the same cold eyes Ethan had described. "He blames you," I said. "Yeah. He spent 10 years inside because of me. Longer than he would have if he'd just pled guilty to assault. But he fought it, claimed self-defense, made Emma testify. The jury didn't buy it. He got 12 years, served 10, so now he wants revenge. He doesn't just want revenge, Jenna. He wants to take everything from me the way I took everything from him, and he knows the best way to do that is to make me violate parole." I looked at the folder again. Marcus's last known address was in Aurora, 20 minutes away. His parole conditions included staying away from Emma and from Ethan. But parole conditions only mattered if they were enforced. And Marcus had already violated by being in our neighborhood. That's when things started making sense. Terrible, clarifying sense. Brandon's harassment hadn't been random. The timing was too perfect. He'd started showing up right after Ethan got out, right after Marcus would have been released. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the texts Brandon had sent, looked at them with new eyes. "Ethan," I said slowly. "I think Brandon's working with Marcus." "What?" "The texts, the timing. Brandon didn't just show up because he's obsessed. Someone told him where I lived. Someone told him to pressure me." Ethan's face went dark. He grabbed his phone, made a call. Whoever answered, he didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Emma, it's me. I need you to tell me the truth. Has anyone contacted you in the last month? Anyone asking about me?" I couldn't hear her response, but I saw Ethan's jaw clench. "When? Why didn't you call me?" A pause. "No, you did the right thing. Stay away from your apartment tonight. Go to Jake's parents' Ari house. I'll explain later. I love you." He hung up, looked at me. Marcus called her 2 weeks ago from a blocked number. Told her he knew where I was. Told her he was going to make me pay for what I did to him. She called the police, but they said without proof of a direct threat, there was nothing they could do. "So he found me instead," I said. "He found out about me and sent Brandon to scare me. To make me vulnerable. To draw you out. And when you asked me for help, I played right into it." The weight of it settled over us like a net. Marcus had been watching, planning, using Brandon as a pawn to create a situation where Ethan would have to choose between protecting me and protecting his freedom. My phone buzzed. Another text from Brandon. "Your boyfriend better watch his back. Some people don't forget." I showed Ethan. He stood up, started pacing. I need to tell Officer Patterson, he said. Document this. Build a case. And if Marcus denies it, then it's his word against ours. But at least it's on record. What about me? What do I do? You stay away from me. I stood up. Excuse me? This is what Marcus wants, Jenna. He wants me connected to you so he can use you to hurt me. If you stay away, if we stop seeing each other, he has no leverage. I'm not staying away. You don't understand what you're risking. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. You spent 10 years in prison protecting someone you loved. Do you really think I'm going to run the first time things get hard? This isn't hard, Jenna. This is dangerous. Marcus doesn't play games. He destroys people. Then we destroy him first. Ethan stared at me. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because I'm trying very hard not to be the person who solves problems with violence, and you're making it really difficult. I grabbed his arm. Then we solve it another way. We document everything. We go to the police. We build a case so airtight that Marcus goes back inside before he can touch either of us. And if that doesn't work, then we figure it out. Together. The word hung between us. Together. It meant something, and we both knew it. Ethan pulled away, ran his hands over his head. My family thinks I'm crazy, I said quietly. My friends stopped calling when I told them about you. My boss pulled me aside yesterday and suggested I reconsider my associations. Everyone I know has an opinion about you except the one person who actually matters. Me. Jenna. I see who you are. Ethan. I see who you're trying to be. And I'm not leaving. He looked at me like I was something holy and heartbreaking. Like I was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking years ago. You're going to regret this, he said softly. Maybe. But it'll be my regret. My choice. That night I came home to find my apartment ransacked, drawers pulled open, cushions slashed, clothes thrown everywhere. Max was at the neighbor's. I'd dropped him off before work, thank God. But my bedroom was destroyed. And spray painted across my wall in dripping red letters. Tell your boyfriend to meet me where it started, or next time I won't just break your things. I stood in the doorway, phone in my shaking hand, staring at those words. Where it started. The apartment where Marcus had hurt Emma. Where Ethan had nearly killed him. Marcus wanted Ethan to come back to the scene of his crime. Wanted him to violate parole by association, by location, by choice. I called Ethan. He answered on the first ring. He was in my apartment, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Marcus was in my apartment. I'm coming over. No, you can't. That's what he wants. I don't care what he wants. Ethan, please. Think. If you come here, if the police show up and find you here after this, it looks like you're involved. It looks like you're part of whatever Marcus is doing. Silence. Then, call 911. Right now. I'll call Officer Patterson. We do this by the book. Okay. Jenna? Yeah? Lock your door. Don't let anyone in except the police. I hung up, called 911, gave them my address. And while I waited for the sirens, I stared at that message on my wall and understood something cold and clear. Marcus Webb didn't just want revenge. He wanted to prove that men like Ethan couldn't change, that second chances were a lie, that violence was the only language any of them would ever speak. And I'd just become the translator. The police took photos, asked questions, wrote everything down in a little notebook like my terror was just another Tuesday night in Denver. They dusted for prints, found nothing useful, and told me to call if anything else happened. Then they left, and I was alone in my destroyed apartment with slashed cushions and that message bleeding down my wall. Ethan showed up anyway. I heard his knock, 3 soft taps, not the pounding I'd expected, and opened the door to find him standing there with a duffel bag and eyes full of barely controlled rage. The police already left, I said. I know. I waited. You shouldn't be here. I called Officer Patterson, told him everything. He knows I'm here. He knows why. He walked past me into the apartment and stopped when he saw the wall. His whole body went rigid. Where it started, he read aloud. He wants me to go back to Emma's old apartment. Can you? No. It's a parole violation. I'm not allowed within 500 feet of any location connected to my original crime. So if you go, You go back to prison. Yeah. And if you don't go, Marcus escalates. Ethan set down the duffel bag and turned to face me. I'm not going. And you're not staying here tonight. Where am I supposed to go? My place. Or a hotel. I don't care. But you're not sleeping here with that on your wall and your door lock broken again. He broke my lock. Yeah, that's how he got in. I looked at the door. The frame was splintered. I hadn't even noticed. Pack a bag, Ethan said. Enough for a few days. You can't protect me forever. Watch me. There was something in his voice, something final and immovable, that made me stop arguing. I packed a bag, grabbed Max's things, followed Ethan down the hall to his apartment, and watched him lock the door behind us with 2 deadbolts I didn't remember seeing before. When did you install those? I asked. Yesterday. You knew this was coming. I knew Marcus wouldn't stop. I didn't know he'd move this fast. We stood in his living room, my bag at my feet, Max already curled up on Ethan's couch like he'd lived there his whole life. Ethan ran his hands over his head. The gesture I'd learned meant he was thinking, calculating, trying to outthink an enemy who'd spent 10 years planning this. We need to go to the police again, I said. Show them the message. Prove Marcus is violating his parole. We did. I sent Officer Patterson photos. He's opening an investigation. How long will that take? Too long. So what do we do? Ethan looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Not for himself. For me. I use what I learned, he said quietly. What does that mean? It means I spent 10 years inside with men who knew how to survive, how to outthink people, how to use the system instead of fighting it. I know how Marcus thinks. I know what he wants. And I know how to take it away from him. Without breaking your parole. Without breaking my parole. He made phone calls. Lots of them. Called his sister, told her to document every interaction with Marcus going back months. Called a lawyer, a public defender who'd helped him get early release, and asked about restraining orders, about evidence, about what it would take to get Marcus sent back inside. Called contacts I didn't know he had, people from AA meetings, from his carpentry program, from the network of ex-cons trying to stay clean. I watched him build a case the way he built furniture, carefully, methodically, piece by piece. But Marcus was building something too. The next morning, Brandon showed up at my work, walked right into the diner during the breakfast rush and sat at the counter, ordered coffee, smiled at me like we were old friends. Get out, I said. I'm a paying customer. You're violating a restraining order. Am I? He looked around innocently. I'm just having breakfast in a public place. That's not illegal. My manager, Rita, came over. Is there a problem? No problem, Brandon said. Just wanted to tell Jenna that her boyfriend's friend stopped by last night. Real interesting guy. Had a lot to say about second chances and whether guys like Ethan Cole deserve them. My blood went cold. Get out. Now. Or what? You'll call your ex-con boyfriend? I heard he's real good at solving problems with his fists. Rita grabbed the phone. I'm calling the police. Brandon stood up, left a $5 bill on the counter. Tell Ethan that Marcus says hi, and that he's got 48 hours to show up where it started, or things get worse for everyone. He walked out. I stood there shaking, coffee pot in my hand, trying not to scream. Rita called the police anyway. They came, took my statement, told me there wasn't much they could do since Brandon technically hadn't violated the restraining order by sitting in a public restaurant. They'd talk to him, document it, add it to the file that was growing but not protecting me. I called Ethan from the back office. He came to my work, I said. I know. Officer Patterson just called. Brandon's been picked up for questioning. About what? About Marcus. About payments. About conspiracy to harass and intimidate. Turns out Marcus has been paying Brandon $500 a week to scare you. How do you know that? Because someone I know from inside traced Brandon's Venmo account. It's all there. Payments from an account registered to a Marcus web. Is that enough? To send Marcus back? It's enough to get him picked up for parole violation. Whether it's enough to keep him inside depends on what the prosecutor can prove. I closed my eyes, felt the weight of it all pressing down. The fear, the exhaustion, the realization that my life had become a chess game I didn't know how to play. I want this to be over, I said. It will be. Soon. But that afternoon, Everything changed. Officer Patterson showed up at Ethan's apartment where I was hiding with Max, his face grim. "Ethan Cole? Yeah? You need to come with me. Now. What's going on?" "Marcus Webb filed a police report claiming you threatened him. Says you called him 2 nights ago and told him you'd finish what you started 10 years ago. That's a lie. Probably. But until we sort it out, you're being brought in for questioning, and your parole is suspended pending investigation." I watched them take him. Watched Ethan put his hands behind his back without resistance, without argument, because that's what you do when you're an ex-con and the system decides you're guilty before you even speak. "Wait," I said. "I can prove he didn't call Marcus. I was with him that night. He never left my sight." Officer Patterson looked at me with something like pity. "Then you'll need to testify to that. But I gotta warn you, miss, Marcus's lawyer is going to tear you apart. They'll make you look like a woman who's been manipulated by a violent criminal. They'll dig into your past with your ex. They'll paint you as unstable, desperate, someone who'd lie to protect the man who's using you. He's not using me." "Then prove it." They took Ethan to county lockup. His parole hearing was set for 3 days. 3 days to gather evidence, to build a defense, to prove that Marcus was lying and Ethan was innocent. 3 days that would determine if Ethan spent the next 6 months finishing his parole or the next 10 years back inside. I stood in that apartment alone, Max whining at my feet, and understood something with perfect clarity. I was the only witness who could save him. And testifying would mean exposing everything. My past with Brandon, my judgment, my choice to trust a man everyone said I shouldn't. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Jenna?" It was Ethan, calling from jail. "Don't testify." "What? Let me go. You've given me more than I deserved. Don't sacrifice yourself for this. I'm not letting you go back to prison for something you didn't do. Jenna, please. You told me prison teaches you patience, discipline, how to rebuild. Well, you taught me something too. You taught me what it looks like to fight for something worth keeping. You don't understand what they'll do to you on that stand. I understand perfectly. And I'm doing it anyway." Silence. Then his voice, rough and breaking. "Why? Because you're worth fighting for, Ethan. And I'm done letting other people tell me what I should be afraid of." The line went quiet. Then, "I love you. You know that, right?" It was the first time he'd said it. The first time either of us had said it. "I know," I whispered. "I love you too." They disconnected the call. I stood there in his empty apartment, holding the phone, and made a decision that would either save us both or destroy me. I was going to find the truth. And I was going to make everyone listen. I stopped waiting for someone to save me. The morning after they took Ethan, I woke up on his couch with Max pressed against my side and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I'd spent so long being afraid. Of Brandon, of judgment, of making the wrong choice, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to be angry, to be certain, to decide that enough was enough. Marcus Webb had made a mistake. He'd underestimated me. I started with Emma. Found her number in Ethan's phone. He'd left it on his kitchen counter when they took him, and called her before I could talk myself out of it. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, careful. "Emma, this is Jenna. I'm Ethan's neighbor. His friend." A pause. "He told me about you. I need your help. Marcus is trying to send Ethan back to prison, and I need to prove he's lying. I need everything you have on Marcus. Every text, every call, every threat. I gave everything to the police already. I need more than what the police have. I need your story. The whole thing. What he did to you. Why Ethan protected you. Everything they won't let you say in court because it's not relevant or too prejudicial." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "When do you want to meet?" We met at a coffee shop in Boulder. Emma was small, dark-haired, with nervous hands, and Ethan's same gray eyes. She brought a folder thick with printouts. Texts from Marcus that were just vague enough to avoid direct threats, but clear enough to terrify. Photos of bruises. Hospital records from the night Ethan had found Marcus hurting her. A restraining order that had expired. "He used to tell me I was nothing without him," Emma said quietly. "That if I left, he'd make sure everyone knew I was worthless. When I finally tried to leave, he came to our apartment and told me he'd kill me before he let me go. Ethan walked in right as Marcus was choking me. "Did you tell the police that?" I tried. But Marcus's lawyer painted me as a scorned teenager making up stories, said I was protecting my brother's violence. The jury believed Marcus was the victim right up until they saw the hospital photos of what Ethan did to him. But they still convicted Ethan. Yeah, because what Ethan did was worse than what Marcus did. Legally. Even if morally it wasn't. I looked through the papers, my heart racing. "Can I make copies of these?" "Take them. I have backups." Emma met my eyes. "Are you going to testify?" "Yes. They're going to destroy you on the stand. Marcus's lawyer is brutal." "I don't care. Ethan does. He called me last night from jail. Told me to tell you not to do this. He doesn't get to decide that." Emma smiled, just barely. "He said you were stubborn. I didn't realize he meant fearless." "I'm not fearless. I'm terrified. But I'm more terrified of losing him." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then fight. Because my brother deserves someone who fights for him the way he fought for me." Next, I went after Brandon. If Marcus had been paying him, there was a trail. I broke into Brandon's Facebook. He'd never changed his password from when we were together and found exactly what I needed. Messages. Lots of them. Between Brandon and an account with no profile picture and the name M.W. The messages were careful but damning. Keep the pressure on. Make her scared. Make her run to Cole. 500 a week until he breaks. I screenshotted everything, every message, every payment confirmation, every instruction. Then I printed them and took them to Officer Patterson's office. "This is harassment and conspiracy," I said, dropping the folder on his desk. "Marcus Webb paid my ex-boyfriend to terrorize me so Ethan would violate his parole protecting me." Officer Patterson flipped through the pages. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter?" "If you obtained them illegally." "Brandon sent them to me. I lied smoothly. He felt guilty. Wanted to come clean. He'll testify if you grant him immunity. It was a gamble. A complete fabrication." But Officer Patterson was tired and overworked, and I was handing him a case on a silver platter. "I'll look into it," he said. "The hearing is in 2 days." I said I'll look into it. That night, I tracked down Marcus's parole officer, a woman named Sandra Chen, who looked like she'd stopped believing in second chances around the same time she'd started the job. I showed her everything. The messages. The payments. The evidence that Marcus had been stalking Emma despite the restraining order. "This doesn't prove Marcus made the phone call to Ethan," she said. "No. But it proves he's violating parole in multiple ways. And if you dig deeper, you'll find more. You seem very invested in Ethan Cole's freedom." "I am. Why? You know what he did, right? What he's capable of." "I know exactly what he's capable of. He's capable of protecting someone he loves. He's capable of serving his time and coming out better than he went in. He's capable of being kind and careful and honest. And he's capable of being destroyed by a system that won't let him prove he's changed." Sandra Chen studied me for a long moment. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. I'll investigate. But I can't make promises. It wasn't enough. None of it was enough." I could feel time running out like sand through my fingers. The day before the hearing, I did something reckless. I went to Marcus's last known address, a halfway house in Aurora, and waited, watched. When he finally came out, I followed him. Not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to see where he went. A bar. A package store. And then a meeting with Brandon behind a closed restaurant. I took photos from across the street. Watched them talk. Watched Marcus hand Brandon cash. Watched Brandon count it and nod. Then I called Officer Patterson. "They're meeting right now. Marcus and Brandon, behind Marco's Pizza on Colfax. If you move fast, you can catch them together." "Miss Harper, this is starting to feel like harassment." "It's evidence. Either you want to catch them or you don't." He hung up. But 10 minutes later, 2 squad cars pulled into the parking lot. I watched from a distance as they questioned Marcus and Brandon. Watched Brandon panic and start talking. Watched Marcus's face go dark with rage. And I knew. I'd just burned whatever bridge might have kept me safe. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "You just made a very big mistake." Marcus's voice was cold and quiet. Whatever happens to me, you're going to wish you'd stayed out of it. Threaten me again and I'll add it to the recording I'm making of this call. You think you're smart. You think you saved him. But all you did was paint a target on yourself. Then come for me. Let everyone see what you really are. He laughed. You don't get it. The hearing is tomorrow. And even with all your little detective work, they're still going to ask Ethan one question. Did you call Marcus Webb and threaten him? And when he says no, they're going to ask why Marcus would lie. And the answer is simple. Because men like us never forget. Because revenge is patient. Because your boyfriend is exactly what they think he is, and you're too blind to see it. You're wrong. We'll see. He hung up. I stood in that parking lot, shaking, and realized what I'd done. I'd gathered evidence, built a case, exposed Marcus's conspiracy, but I hadn't proven the one thing that mattered, that Ethan hadn't made that phone call. The hearing was at 9 in the morning. I had 12 hours to figure out how to prove a negative, how to show that something didn't happen when the only witness was the man everyone expected to lie. I went back to Ethan's apartment, looked through everything. His phone records. Officer Patterson already had those. His computer. He barely used it. His life was so bare, so clean, that there was nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Then I found it. Tucked in a drawer beneath the parole officer's business cards and Emma's letters. A small notebook. The kind they give you in prison for tracking days. Ethan had kept writing in it. Every day since his release, he'd written one line, just one. Day 1, free, don't waste it. Day 30, saw her today, the one with the dog. Day 45, fixed her lock. She smiled. First real smile I've seen in years. Day 67, she knows, she didn't run. Day 89, Marcus is out. Everything I built is ending. Day 92, she's fighting for me. I don't deserve it, but I'm grateful. The entry for the night Marcus claimed Ethan called him. Day 91, stayed in, read. Thought about calling Emma, but didn't want to worry her. Jenna brought dinner. We talked about second chances. I think I'm starting to believe in them. It wasn't proof, not legal proof, but it was truth, and sometimes truth was all you had. I took the notebook, held it like a prayer, and I walked into that hearing the next morning, ready to tell a story that no one wanted to hear. About a man who'd spent 10 years becoming someone worth believing in, and a woman who'd decided to believe anyway. The courtroom was small. Ethan sat at a table in County Orange, hands cuffed, looking like he'd already accepted whatever came next. Marcus sat in the gallery, smirking. Brandon was there too, looking nervous. Officer Patterson, Sandra Chen, Emma in the back row. The hearing officer, a gray-haired woman with tired eyes, looked at Ethan. Mr. Cole, you've been accused of violating your parole by threatening Marcus Webb. How do you plead? Not guilty. Do you have evidence to support this? Yes, Your Honor. That's when I stood up. I have evidence, and I have testimony, and I'm asking for the opportunity to present both. The hearing officer looked at me. And you are? Jenna Harper. I'm the reason Marcus Webb orchestrated this entire setup, and I can prove it. They let me testify. Not because they wanted to, but because I'd brought enough evidence that ignoring me would have looked like negligence. I sat in the witness chair with Emma's folder in my lap and Ethan's notebook pressed against my chest like a shield. And I told them everything. I told them about Max running into Ethan's apartment, about the dinner that started it all, about Brandon's harassment and how it escalated exactly when Marcus got out of prison. I showed them the Facebook messages, the Venmo payments, the timeline that proved this wasn't random but calculated. I showed them the photos I'd taken of Marcus and Brandon meeting, the recording of Marcus's threat on my phone, and then I showed them the notebook. This is Ethan Cole's journal, I said. He's kept it every day since his release. The night Marcus claims Ethan called and threatened him, Ethan was with me. We had dinner. We talked about second chances. And he wrote this. I read the entry out loud, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Marcus's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, this so-called evidence is circumstantial at best. A notebook entry isn't proof of location. Miss Harper could have written this herself. She's clearly emotionally involved with Mr. Cole and has every reason to lie for him. I'm not lying, I said. Aren't you? The lawyer walked toward me, her heels clicking on the floor. Tell me, Miss Harper, how long have you known Mr. Cole? 3 months. 3 months. And in that time, has he told you about his violent history? Yes. About the man he nearly killed? Yes. He told me everything. And yet you chose to involve yourself with a convicted felon, a man on parole, a man with a documented history of aggravated assault. Doesn't that seem like poor judgment to you? No. It seems like seeing someone for who they are, not who they used to be, who they are. Miss Harper, men like Ethan Cole don't change. They manipulate. They find vulnerable women and make them believe they're protectors when really they're predators. Isn't it possible that you've been manipulated? That everything Mr. Cole has done, fixing your lock, walking your dog, protecting you from your ex, was designed to make you dependent on him? I looked at Ethan. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched, refusing to meet my eyes. Like he believed what she was saying. Like he thought I'd finally see him the way everyone else did. No, I said clearly. That's not possible. How can you be sure? Because predators take. Ethan never took anything from me. He gave me safety when I had none. He gave me honesty when I was used to lies. He gave me space to choose, and I chose him. Not because I'm vulnerable or manipulated, but because I see what 10 years of paying for a mistake looks like. And it looks like a man who gets up every morning and chooses to be better. The lawyer smiled coldly. That's a lovely speech, but speeches don't prove innocence. Do you have any actual evidence that Mr. Cole didn't make that phone call? Yes. His phone records show no outgoing call to Marcus's number that night. Phone records can be manipulated. Burner phones can be used. Then explain the Venmo payments. Explain Brandon's messages. Explain why Marcus violated his parole to come after Ethan if Ethan was the one threatening him. I don't have to explain anything, Miss Harper. The burden of proof is on you. Officer Patterson stood up. Your Honor, if I may. We picked up Brandon Reed yesterday for questioning. He confessed to being paid by Marcus Webb to harass Miss Harper. He's willing to testify that Marcus orchestrated this entire situation to force Ethan Cole into a parole violation. The hearing officer looked at Marcus. Mr. Webb, is this true? Marcus stood up slowly, and when he smiled, it was the smile of someone who knew the game was over but wanted to inflict as much damage as possible on the way out. Yeah, it's true. I paid Brandon. I set this whole thing up. Because Ethan Cole took 10 years of my life, and I wanted him to know what that felt like. I wanted him to lose everything the way I lost everything. So you lied about the phone call? Yeah, I lied. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Because even if he walks out of here today, everyone's still going to see him the way I do, as a violent ex-con who's one bad day away from doing it again. And her? Marcus pointed at me. She'll figure it out eventually. When he loses his temper, when he shows her who he really is, she'll remember this moment and realize she should have listened. Ethan stood up then, his voice cutting through the courtroom like a blade. You're wrong, he said. I'm not that person anymore. I spent 10 years learning the difference between rage and strength, between reaction and choice. You wanted me to come after you. You wanted me to prove I'm still violent, but I didn't. I used the system. I documented everything. I asked for help. And the only person in this room who couldn't change is you. The hearing officer banged her gavel. Mr. Webb, you've just confessed to multiple parole violations, including conspiracy, witness intimidation, and making false statements to law enforcement. You'll be remanded to custody immediately pending a full parole revocation hearing. As for you, Mr. Cole, the charges are dismissed. Your parole continues as scheduled. They took Marcus out in handcuffs. He didn't fight, just walked past me with empty eyes, and I understood something then. He hadn't wanted revenge. He'd wanted company. He'd wanted Ethan to fail because if Ethan could change, it meant Marcus could have changed too, and he'd chosen not to. Brandon took a plea deal, testified against Marcus, got probation and a restraining order that kept him 500 feet from me for the next 5 years, and Ethan walked out of that courthouse a free man. We stood on the steps in the Denver sunshine, and he turned to me with eyes full of something I couldn't name. You saved me? He said. No, you saved yourself. I just made people listen. Why did you do it? Risk everything like that. Because you showed me what redemption looks like, I said. Not perfection, Not pretending the past didn't happen. Just getting up every day and choosing to be better than you were yesterday. And that's worth fighting for. He pulled me into his arms then, right there on the courthouse steps, and held me like I was the answer to every question he'd stopped asking in prison. People walked past, stared, judged, and I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I'd chosen something that was mine, and I'd fought to keep it. The next 6 months weren't easy. Ethan finished his parole, got a full-time job at a custom furniture shop, started teaching carpentry to other ex-cons trying to rebuild. I finished nursing school, passed my boards, got a job at Denver General. We moved into a small apartment together, one with a balcony where Max could sleep in the sun and watch the city. My mom came to visit eventually. She was quiet at first, careful, studying Ethan like he was a test she hadn't prepared for. Then he made her coffee, fixed her car's squeaking door, and listened to her talk about my dad for 2 hours without interrupting. When she left, she hugged him. "Take care of my daughter," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "And Ethan?" She looked at him seriously. "Thank you for showing her what real strength looks like." My friends came around too. Slowly, one by one, when they saw the way he looked at me, like I was both fragile and indestructible, like I was the thing that made freedom worth having, they started to understand. One night, sitting on that balcony under the stars, Ethan asked me why I'd stayed, why I'd fought for him when everyone told me to walk away. I thought about it, about the girl I'd been 3 years ago, scared, small, convinced she was broken, about the woman I'd become. "Because you taught me something," I said. "You taught me that people aren't their worst moments. They're the sum of every choice they make after. And you've spent every day since prison choosing to be someone worth believing in." He smiled. Really smiled. The kind of smile that reached his eyes and erased years of weight. "I love you," he said. "You know that, right? I know. I love you too. Even knowing everything. Even knowing what I did. Especially knowing everything. Because your past doesn't scare me, Ethan. Your past is proof that you're strong enough to survive anything, and that's the kind of man I want beside me." We sat in comfortable silence, his arm around my shoulders, Max snoring at our feet. The city stretched out below us, full of people making choices, making mistakes, making their way through life the best they could. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked quietly. "Choosing me?" "Never." "Do you?" "Never." And I believed him. Because we'd built something real. Not perfect. Not without scars. But honest. We were two people who'd learned that second chances weren't given. They were earned. Day by day. Choice by choice. Moment by moment. We're still here. Still building. Still proving that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone real. And choosing them, scars and all. It's about seeing past society's judgment to the person underneath. It's about believing in redemption not as a concept, but as a daily practice. Ethan Cole spent 10 years paying for his mistakes, and I spent 3 months learning that the bravest thing you can do is see someone's whole story, the good and the bad, the past and the present, and love them anyway. That's our story. The ex-prisoner and the woman who didn't run, the man who learned to choose better and the woman who chose to see him. And every morning when we wake up in that small apartment with the balcony and the dog and the life we built from nothing, I'm grateful. Not because it's easy, but because it's ours. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.